Well, welcome back, my driver's ed people. We are continuing our discussion of Illinois Rules of the Road, Chapter 4, Traffic Laws. So it took us just 3 days to get through chapters 1, 2, and 3. 1 day each. Chapter 4, though, is a massive chapter. This is a really big chapter. We spent all day yesterday talking about Chapter 4, and we're going to spend all day today talking about Chapter 4, and we're still not going to get through all of it. There is a lot of information in Chapter 4, and that's totally okay, all right? These are the things that you have to know every day out there when you are driving. So it's important for us to spend a lot of time on this and make sure that you understand it. That way, when you're out there driving, you know what's going on and you know how to make right decisions. So let's go ahead and get started and take a look at the information that we have to learn today. So we are continuing with our right-of-way scenarios, and you might remember that right-of-way just means who gets to go first in what situation. So a driver must yield the right-of-way to other drivers, bicyclists, or pedestrians when entering an intersection with a flashing yellow arrow. So these have become really popular in the last 5-6 years. They used to not, you didn't see these anywhere, and you would just have a green light. And now, instead of just having a green light, a lot of intersections put these flashing yellow arrows, and specifically it's flashing left turn arrows, flashing yellow left turn arrows. So let's take a look at an example of what we're talking about here. Now, this is a still image, so it's not actually flashing, but this is what we're talking about: left turn yield on flashing arrow. So you come up to an intersection and there's a green light for the straight traffic, the traffic that's going to be going straight on through. But if you're going to be turning left at that intersection, sometimes they'll have one of these signs and they'll have a flashing left turn arrow. So what does it mean? Well, anytime we're turning left at an intersection, we have to yield to the traffic that's coming straight towards us. Anytime we're turning left, we have to yield to the traffic that's headed straight towards us. I'm going to back up a couple of slides here just so I can draw this out quickly to make sure that everybody understands what I'm talking about. So let's say that we are a car right here. You can see why I'm a driver's ed teacher and not an art teacher, because I'm horrible at this. And we are wanting to turn left, okay? And we've got a green light. But here is a car that's coming this direction, and they also have a green light, and they're going to be going straight, okay? So we'll say that we are car A, and we'll say that this is car B. Okay, if both of us have green lights, then car A has to yield to car B. Car B gets to go straight, or gets to go first because they're moving straight. Car A has to yield. So if they both have a green light, that's the law. Some intersections, what they've started doing, and it would be more likely that it would be an intersection with multiple lanes, but if there's a left turn lane, these are really common, they'll put a flashing yellow left turn arrow here, which means the same thing as a green light. So you can go, but you have to yield to anybody that's coming straight. That flashing yellow turn arrow just kind of helps people understand that, hey, you can't just go. If you're turning left and you have a green light, you can't just go. You still have to yield to these cars that are coming towards you. So that's what that means. Okay, let's get back on our correct slide here. So that's that flashing yellow turn arrow. Okay, what else do we have here for right-of-way situations? When two vehicles, let me go back. When two vehicles on different roadways reach an uncontrolled intersection at the same time, the vehicle on the left should yield to the vehicle on the right. All right, uncontrolled intersection. I don't like that terminology, okay, because control is talking about, are there rules about what is supposed to happen? At least that's what I think of when I hear that word control. What they're talking about here, though, When they say uncontrolled, they mean that there's no stop signs and there's no stop lights. There's also no yield signs. There's no traffic control devices, no signs, no signals to tell you what to do. But there are rules to tell you what to do. So there are actually things controlling what's supposed to happen. They're just rules that you have to know. You have to know these things. Okay, so two vehicles on different roadways. So that means that you're not coming towards each other and meeting. That means that you're on roads like this, coming at each other at a 90-degree angle. Let's take a look at our example here. So this is actually an intersection that's in Staunton. I pulled this off of Google Maps. This is an intersection that's in Staunton. It's kind of over behind R&B's, kind of in that neighborhood that's got the Schwann's distribution center. That's just over this direction down this street. Okay, but why I chose this intersection was if you look at it, there's not a stop sign or a yield sign on any of these four corners. We've got one signpost right here, but all it does is tell us the street names. There's not a stop sign or a yield sign. So if you can imagine a car approaching right here and a car approaching right from this direction. Okay, so again, we'll call this car A, and here we'll call this car B. So if you can imagine this situation, who gets to go first? There's actually a rule, okay? The rule says if you've got cars approaching on opposing roadways or on different roadways, the car on the right gets to go. So that would be car B in this situation. Car A has to yield. They've got to stop here, let car B do whatever car B is doing. Maybe car B is turning right, maybe car B is going straight, whatever the case might be. But car A has to yield to car B. That's what the rule is. Now, that's what the rule is, but what I notice happens a lot in actual practice is that the car that is turning will oftentimes yield. Oh, wow, I got really wild with my line there, didn't I? The car that is turning will oftentimes yield to the car that is going straight. So in this situation, let's say this is car A, and this is B, okay? If A is turning, let's say that they've got their blinker on and they're going to turn right. If A is turning, then oftentimes A will stop and just let B go. But that's not the way the law is written. The law is written that car B should yield to car A and car A should get to go. So I just wanted to point that out. All right, our next right-of-way situation. When making a left-hand turn into oncoming traffic, if drivers enter an intersection while the light is green, they may finish the turn even though the light turns red. This one will freak you out the first time you have to do it, but it's totally legal. It's totally fine. So what they're talking about here is you come up to a traffic light and you're wanting to turn left. Well, the light is green, but there are cars coming, so you can't turn left yet. You have to yield. So the law says when making a left-hand turn into oncoming traffic, if a driver enters the intersection while the light is green, so they're saying you can enter the intersection while the light is green. You may finish the turn even though the light turns red. So you can pull into the intersection, wait, and cars are coming towards you, and the light turns yellow and there's still cars coming towards you, and the light turns red and there's still, the light's red and you're out in the middle of the intersection. You're not breaking the law. As soon as those cars stop, you can finish your turn and then you're out of there. You're out of the intersection. So let's take a look at this scenario. So in this scenario, we've got a green light right here. You can see that the traffic light for the semi truck and the traffic light for this yellow car is green. So the semi truck has pulled into the intersection. Notice how they've pulled into the intersection and they've got their left blinker on. They're waiting to turn left. Well, let's say that it's not just this yellow car. Let's say that there's another car behind that. And while these cars are going straight through the intersection, the light turns yellow and then the light turns red and the semi truck is stuck out here in the intersection. They haven't done anything wrong. As soon as that light turns red, this traffic over here will stop and the semi truck just goes ahead and makes their turn and everything's fine. And then this direction of traffic over here, they'll be able to start going because the semi will be out of the intersection. So totally fine. That's absolutely legal. But it's going to freak you out the first time you do it because you're going to be out in the middle of the intersection and the light's going to turn yellow and then it's going to turn red. All right, so those are some intersection right-of-way situations. Well, this is a different type of intersection. It's a merge. So a merge is when two roads going in the same direction come together. And so the most common place that you're going to run into this is on the interstate. Well, what does the law say about this? This says when approaching a merge sign with through traffic. So this is a little tricky to understand, but what this is saying is that you are the car that's joining the interstate. You're not the car that's already on the interstate. You're the car that's joining the interstate because you're approaching a merge sign with through traffic. So the through traffic is on the interstate and you're approaching the through traffic. That means that you as the driver must increase or decrease speed to avoid a crash. So the person that's joining or merging onto the interstate, they're the person that has to adjust or decrease their speed. So here's an example of it. So this is on the interstate, right out past D-Camp on Interstate 55. This is that merge right there. And so these are the cars that are already on the interstate. And here, over here, this is the merging lane right here. That's the frontage road over there where that white car is. But this is the merging lane right here. So if you're on this merging ramp for the interstate, then you're the vehicle that has to adjust your speed to be able to join traffic. Now, if you are the car that is on the interstate, let's say that you're this car right here. So you're already on the interstate. You should get over if you can. If there's nobody in this other lane next to you, which you can see here, you're not. And let's say that there was a car right here that was getting ready to merge. Okay. You should put your blinker on and you should scoot over to the other lane. That makes it a lot easier for this car to join the traffic. And that's what you should do. Legally, do you have to do that? No, but you should. It's just good common courtesy. It's good defensive, safe driving. It makes everybody's life easier. Okay, so that's what should happen. When approaching a yield sign, a driver should slow down or stop to avoid a crash. Okay, so stop signs we've talked about, you got to stop, all right? And you have to make a complete stop. A little pro tip for you here. To know whether or not you've made a complete stop, you feel it with your body. So as you're approaching that stop sign, you keep your foot on the brake until you feel your body rest backward. It's very slight, all right, but you will definitely feel it. As you're approaching that stop sign, your body will be moving forward because your car is slowing down. And as soon as the car comes to rest, your body rests back a little bit. Your body leans back a little bit. You'll feel it, okay? If you don't feel that, then you haven't made a complete stop. So keep your foot on the brake until you feel your body move back a little bit. All right, so that's how you know you make a complete stop. But let's talk about a yield sign because that's what we're on right here is a yield sign. What do? So if you're approaching a yield sign, and this is another intersection in Staunton. This is actually pretty close to the school over on Pennsylvania Street. And here we have a yield sign. So a yield sign means just that. You're yielding or giving the other cars the opportunity to go, and you have to wait. So we're on this street right here, which is Pennsylvania. And then we've got the cross traffic on this street. I don't remember which one this one is here, but we've got the cross traffic. So if we're on Pennsylvania right here, we don't have the right of way. So what we do is we approach this intersection and we look, and if it's clear, we don't have to stop. So, we would definitely have to slow down because as you can see, there are visual obstructions. We got a tree over here. There's a tree over here. So it's not like we can just go flying through this intersection. We're going to have to slow down and so that we can be able to look both directions and make sure it's clear. But as long as it's clear, we do not have to make a complete stop and we can continue on through the intersection. If we pull up here and there is a car coming and there's a car over here approaching from our right or a car over here approaching from our left, it doesn't matter which side, but if there's a car approaching from either side, then we have to stop and we have to let those cars clear the intersection before we can proceed. So that's an important thing to know. That's how you handle a yield sign. All right, so our next right-of-way situation. A driver must yield the right-of-way to other drivers even after the light turns green when there are vehicles in the intersection. So you're sitting at a traffic light, you're sitting at a red light, and the light turns green. If there's anybody still in that intersection, you have to yield to them. So an example of that would be, let's say that this is a traffic light and you are sitting here at a red light, okay? You've got a red light and that light all of a sudden turns to green. That's going to be hard to draw on here because I'm just going to draw it over here where we've got a white background. That way you can see it. That light turns to green. So our red light is gone and now we have a green light. So you can go, you have the right of way, but you have to wait until anybody that's in the intersection has cleared the intersection. So maybe this car right here crossed this line before the light turned red. So all we have to do is we just have to wait till they finish their way on through the intersection. And then once they're gone, then we're able to proceed through. Okay. Wow, that's some bad driving right there. If that's your path of travel, you need some more time in the driver's ed car. All right, another example or situation where we have to yield the right of way is when emerging from an alley, building, private road, driveway, after you come to a complete stop. So the part of this that a lot of people skip over is the after you come to a complete stop. What this is saying is when you are coming out of an alley, a building like a parking garage or a garage, a private road or a driveway, whenever you come out of any of these things, before you merge with the road, you're supposed to make a complete stop. A lot of you probably didn't know that, and a lot of your parents probably don't know that. Most people don't stop when they leave their driveway, but the law says that you're supposed to. Let's take a look at a picture here. So what I've got here, this is Bank of Springfield, and this is Hardee's right over here. This is the Hardee's parking lot. And so let's say that you're a car over here in the Bank of Springfield parking lot, and you're going to exit this parking lot. Man, drawing is so tough on here, and I'm not any good to begin with. You're going to exit this parking lot, and you're going to come out to this stop sign right here. Okay? So if that's going to be your path of travel, you have to yield to any cars that are already on this road. So if there's another car down here and they're coming up this road, you have to wait for them to go by. They're going to come up to the stop sign, and who knows what they're going to do. Maybe they're going to turn left and head over here. You have to yield to them. Once they go past, then you can pull out and come to the stop sign. So that's what that law says. Drivers have to yield the right-of-way to cross traffic when on the terminating highway of a T intersection with no traffic control signs or signals. Okay, so again, we're talking about an uncontrolled intersection here, but specifically we're talking about a T intersection. So let me show you a picture of a T intersection. Now, this is not an uncontrolled T intersection. As you can see right here, this one has a stop sign. But this is a good example of what a T intersection looks like. So in this example, since we have a stop sign, then it's really clear. If you're here on this road, you have to make a complete stop. And you can see there's no stop sign for this direction of traffic. There's no stop sign over here for this direction of traffic. This is not a road over here. This is a driveway. This is just outside of Staunton on the way to Williamson and Livingston is where this is. Some of you guys might know this road, Benthrop Road. But so if you're here and you're in this car, we'll call this car 1. And over here we have car 2 traveling down the road. Car 2 has the right-of-way. Car 2 gets to travel on by. And then once they're by, then car 1 can make their left turn if that's what they're doing, and they can head on to Livingston. But what if this is not a controlled intersection? What if there's no stop sign there? So we'll just pretend that this stop sign isn't here. Let's see. Let me just kind of scribble it out a little bit here. Okay, so the stop sign is gone. So if there's no stop sign there, the rule says that whoever is on the terminating leg or the terminating highway of this intersection. So which one is the terminating one? Well, it's the one whose road ends. And you can see that this road right here does not continue on. It ends at this intersection. And it is joining this road that's running left to right in our picture. So this road is the terminating road. This road is the through road because it continues on through the intersection. So car 1 is going to have to yield no matter what they're doing, whether they're turning right or whether they're turning left. That doesn't matter. Car 1 is going to have to yield. Car 2 will have the right of way. Whether they're going straight, whether they're turning right, that doesn't matter. They will have the right of way. Driver has to yield the right of way when approaching emergency vehicles using audible and visual signals. So especially if an emergency vehicle is pulled off on the side of the road using lights or sirens, that's what audible and visual signals mean, lights and sirens. Or if they're driving down the road, you've got to yield to them. We're going to talk more about what to do if a police car is pulled over on the side of the road and has their lights on. We'll talk more about that, about how to handle that situation later. But just briefly, the way you handle that situation is you move over, you slow down, and you proceed with caution. So those 3 things are supposed to take place. It's called the move over law. It used to be called Scott's law. But what it means is you have to move over to the other lane. That's the number 1 thing that has to happen. A driver may not enter an intersection or drive through a marked crosswalk unless there is enough space to allow the passage of other vehicles and or pedestrians. So here's what we're talking about. This intersection, you can see these vehicles right here are out in the middle of the intersection. The intersection ends right here with this crosswalk. Maybe yellow is a bad color to choose for that. Let's go with red. I think that'll show up better. This intersection ends right here at this crosswalk. And I assume that this van and this little SUV, that they entered the intersection when the light was green. But if you look up here now, the light is red. And now they're blocking the intersection. So anybody over here wanting to go this direction of travel, they can't go. These vehicles should have never pulled into the intersection because there wasn't enough room for them. But they did it anyway, and that's illegal. You are not supposed to do that. Okay, similarly, you cannot drive onto a railroad crossing unless there's enough space on the other side of the railroad crossing. So this is the same kind of idea. You can't pull into a traffic intersection unless there's enough room to go all the way through the intersection. You cannot pull onto a railroad crossing unless there's enough room to go all the way across the crossing without obstructing the passage of a train. So what are we talking about here? Well, sometimes there are situations where you have a stop sign really quickly after a railroad crossing. So this blue car, you can see they've gone across the tracks, but if there were another car behind them, they are not allowed to pull onto the tracks behind this blue car until the blue car moves out of the way. Because if that blue car is stuck there and doesn't have room to get out of the way, then this red car will be stuck here on the tracks. And if a train comes along, you can see how that's a bad situation. So you're not allowed to pull onto the railroad tracks until it's clear and you can make it all the way across. And you can see that there's a sign here that even says that, no stopping on the tracks. Sometimes you'll see a sign that I think is a little bit better. Don't pull onto the tracks until you can get all the way across. But that's more words and takes up more room. But the general idea is the same. No stopping on the tracks. All right, so we come to our last slide of the day. Now, we've talked about a lot of very specific rules of the road and how to handle situations where, who gets to go first in what situation. Well, there are also a lot of pedestrian right-of-way situations, and there's a long list of rules on pages 26 and 27. All of those rules can pretty much be summed up into one statement and one simple rule. If you're a driver of a car and there's a pedestrian in the street, yield to the pedestrian. Don't hit the pedestrian with your car, right? If there's a pedestrian approaching a crosswalk, if there's a pedestrian approaching an unmarked crosswalk, also known as a corner, all right? Any corner, any intersection. If you see a pedestrian crossing the street or preparing to cross the street, yield to the pedestrian. Let the pedestrian go. You stop your car. You follow that rule and people stay alive. Nobody gets hit by a car. And that's what all of the rules on pages 26 and 27 are talking about. It's a bunch of very specific situations, but the rule is always the same. Yield to the pedestrian. Yield to the pedestrian if they're doing this. Yield to the pedestrian if they're doing this. Yield to the pedestrian if they're doing this. Lots of specific situations. The rule for you is always the same. Yield to the pedestrians. So we've got a lot more to cover in Chapter 4, but we will get to that next week. What we're going to do tomorrow is we're going to have a review session. And then Friday, we will have a quiz. All right. So, hey, I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed the lecture today. But even if you didn't, just like my favorite professor, Dr. Phillips, used to say, it's better than a sharp stick in the eye. All right. We'll see you.